podcast discussion. Tonight's topic is going to be microtransactions, loot crates, and mini DLC, which I'll get a bit more specific details of what that is later on, and whether it is good or bad for the game industry and gamers as a whole. Tonight joining me, I have Cobalt, Storm, and Dane6125, long-time friends and players of mine, and maybe Dark Nexus, as you can see the name on the screen. He may or may not be joining us. He's in a different time zone, so he may come in midstream. We'll soon find out. But yeah, anyway, I'll introduce you here. We've got Cobalt. Say g'day, Cobalt.
Hello.
And Dane. Say hello to the people, Dane.
Hey.
Okay, so yeah, you'll see I've also labelled it that I'm streaming with Star Wars Battlefront 2, even though we're not playing Star Wars Battlefront here. And that is because Star Wars Battlefront is going to be part of the reason I wanted to discuss this topic. We'll be hopefully doing these episodes once a week, or at least once a month, and try and pick a topic that's relevant to the current gaming news. So yeah, guys, what do you think? I'm noticing that there's a lot of games coming out now. Normally you get free-to-play games, and they're known for loot crates and microtransactions as a way for the developers to make some money while providing a game that's free. But we're seeing more and more games coming out now that are basically full titles that are brought out by AAA companies, like Overwatch and Star Wars Battlefront 2, where you pay full price for the game, and then you're still getting these loot crates and other premium content. So what do you think about that? How about you, Cobalt? Would you like to speak your mind first?
Right, so, I mean, it really depends on what kind of games. So AAA games are doing one thing, but it seems actually that they're learning from the people who originally started coming out with these sorts of microtransactions and loot crates. I mean, there are some really bad offenders who you can attribute as being some of the original people who released this content. But there are also the indie and AAA game developers who sort of feel like they have to add it because it's something that everyone else is doing it right now.
Yeah, so you think it's just that everybody's trying to follow a trend? It's like they're seeing some people making easy money and then jumping on that bandwagon?
Well, yeah, they just see it as it's just a revenue stream that they're missing out on. Where in fact that they really should only be including it if it actually adds to their game in a meaningful way.
Okay. Some pretty good opinions there. We'll get back to that because, like I said, I'll get your general thoughts to begin with, and then I'll throw in my 2 cents, and then we'll just get into a general discussion. So, Dane, what about you? What's your whole take on the current trend of microtransactions, loot crates, paid skins and things like that? A good example would be like Borderlands 2. That had a lot of where you paid for skins in the game.
See, I don't have much of a problem with microtransactions when it doesn't affect the gameplay as a whole. You're not paying for...
When it's like just cosmetic.
Yeah, it's just cosmetic stuff. You want to make your stuff look a little bit more personalised. You throw in $1 or $2. That's how they're finding a new way to make a lot more money out of the one game purchase. But when you start paying for, weapons that are better than everyone else's and stuff like that, it starts getting to the realm where you've either got to lay down money or just stop playing, which I don't feel is quite fair on the community that's already bought the game as a whole. It should be the whole game.
Yep. Yeah, well, valid points as well. Well, what my take on it is the same sort of thing, that I can understand a free-to-play company doing it, where they provide the game completely for free, and a lot of those games, especially like Korean RPGs, for example, you play the game for free, and then they have unlockable content. Now, some of those are pay-to-win items where you'll get sort of a premium item that will give you some sort of boost in the game, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because that's where all their revenue is coming from. But my main concern at the moment is I'm noticing a lot of these AAA companies like Bethesda and DICE, publishers like Electronic Arts, getting on this bandwagon. For example, at the moment, Star Wars Battlefront 2, when it comes out, it's about $62, I think, in Australian monies, which is basically a full-priced game for us. And it is a full-priced game, a full game, because it's meant to have a campaign and stuff in it. But it just seems like price gouging. It's like they've taken that DLC to the next level, sort of thing. And especially when you look at, like, they have the Elite Edition, which gives you a couple of extras, which are basically characters or weapons, and that's $114. And then you've got Bethesda, who's recently got Quake Champions, which is a free-to-play game. But to permanently unlock the characters in that, you can end up paying more than what Quake 3 Arena cost back in 1998. 1999, sorry. So, yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I'm okay with it when the game is for free, like Dota or something like that. And even then, it depends on whether it's a cosmetic item. But, yeah, that's my general viewpoint on it. That, yeah, free-to-play, it's sort of almost allowable, but when you're playing for a full-price game, I think it starts getting into murky, money-grabbing territory. And that's my basic 2 cents worth. So, yeah, let's go into a general discussion now, I guess. Yeah, like...
A good example of something that's come out recently, well, sorry, it hasn't been a recent game release, it's just more of the way Microsoft is handling Minecraft at the moment. They've gone from a one-off purchase of the game to you purchase the game and then you purchase additional skins and you purchase worlds and stuff like that. They've moved into the microtransactions.
Well, do you think that consoles can be a problem there? Because, I mean, consoles are basically what turned expansion packs. We've sort of progressed from this. We've gone from expansion packs, where, say, back in the day on PC, you'd buy a game like Morrowind or Quake 2, or even the original Quake, and then they would bring out expansion packs, which were basically full add-on campaigns. But not only that, you'd also get extra multiplayer content where it was applicable. Like Morrowind, for example, you had the the Blood Tribunal and something, and the Tribunal and the other one, the Viking sort of themed one. But they gave you whole new areas as well as whole new campaigns for your money. Then the original Microsoft Xbox came out, and they started bringing out DLC, and it was like Splinter Cell. I remember it was like, here's an add-on level, and here's another add-on level. You didn't get a whole campaign; you just basically got an extra mission. And you know, on PC we still had modding and things like the skins you get now. We used to be able to Photoshop them up ourselves, or we could go to a modding site and get those. But then, as I said, Borderlands, for example, it sort of pissed me off because you were getting these skins, and they were just basically recolors of skins that were already in the game. And even that, you spend all your time looking at your gun and your hand, so the other players are the people who are getting the benefit of you purchasing those skins. And then we're getting more and more content cut, and it's being released as DLC. But even then, the DLC, even when they have had add-on pack campaigns and things, they seem to be getting smaller and smaller, but the price tags remaining the same or more once you start adding all this stuff up.
There's an interesting aside for the Director's Edition type thing. So, in sort of second generation modern consoles, your Xbox 360, your PS3, that you could buy like pre-order, the base edition of a game, or you could pre-order the next edition up, and maybe it'd come in a fancy case or something.
Yeah.
But basically, the items you get, unless you were super like hardcore, you were just basically wasting money on you're just giving them money for getting stuff that's worth. It's essentially.
Yeah. Well, Halo is a good example of that. If you got the limited edition version, you got some sort of recon thing, and it was just basically like a Bluetooth earpiece, but it was purely cosmetic. But you might pay an extra $20 for that over the regular version, or the Scout, the recon helmet. And
for the physical versions, like you'd go and pre-order it in the store, you actually get something at the end of it. So it wasn't exactly, that much of a bad thing. I mean, if you wanted that extra thing, whether it was a life-size Halo assault rifle, who knows, right? Or if you wanted a T-shirt, maybe they give you a T-shirt or something.
Yeah, you get a little statue or something like that you can stick up on your entertainment unit, or you can even put it on eBay and sell it. It's got some sort of collective value.
Yeah, that kind of stuff's fine, and they got some collective value. But then they're fast forwarding to digital distribution on Steam, right? If you get Director's Edition of something, what do you get? Maybe the official soundtrack? I mean, come on, what is this?
Yeah.
$20 for an official soundtrack and maybe a character portrait? which is actually meaningless.
Yeah, some digital artwork that you can get onto Google image search and find and download.
Oh, or is contained in the game originally.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, you just screenshot it. I mean, a good example of this, again, I think, is how I was saying about Quake 2. People will always hear me go on about Quake 2 because it's one of my most favourite games of all time. It was just solid game that was sort of groundbreaking for when it came out. Honestly, it was superseded by Half-Life pretty quickly. But the thing was, you got a full, complete campaign, and then you got multiplayer as well. Now, id Software would say, well, thank you for spending $90 on this game. As a thank you to all the people who bought it, here is an additional 8 multiplayer maps for free. And then it was like, and here's an additional extra player models and skins. Where that seems to be dying off now. I mean, Bethesda here with Quake Champions is a good example of it, where if you look at the way Quake's gone, it's like you're actually getting less from Quake 2 onwards. The next Quake 3 came out, and Quake 3 Arena was just the multiplayer aspect. There's no campaign. The multiplayer was essentially the bots that were used in Quake 3 were actually a modification for Quake 2 called the Gladiator bot. So they basically took the Quake 2 engine, did it up, made it look prettier, and it was a solid and tight game. I'm not going to criticise the game. I definitely got my money's worth out of it, but you could mod it. You got development tools. So you could make your own levels. You could only make your own maps. But yeah, Quake 2, you got the campaigns then, and because they gave you those sort of freebies and you'd already invested a lot of money in it, you would be, okay, I'm going to go buy the campaign. You know, I've got such a good experience. And both the campaigns, I felt like I got my money's worth with it. And now it feels like we're getting these games where there's less content in the sequels. And back then also, you had to wait a couple of years. Like it was 2 years between Quake 2 and Quake 3. And then you look at some of these COD games and it's like, you know, here's COD 4, now here's COD 5 6 months later. And it's the same with Battlefield. Battlefield 4 came out. It took about 12 months for it to get up to scratch. And now they've already, then they brought out that hard line, which once upon a time you would get as a total conversion made by modders. And that's spectacularly.
Yeah, so it was a full price game, which could essentially have been a new game mode for the Battlefield 3.
Yeah. It could have been a add-on or just a mod, even if it was a paid expansion at a reduced cost. I'll save my bitching about Battlefield 3 for another day with how much that cost and the way they went. But I mean, Borderlands, for example, Borderlands 2, I liked that game thoroughly. I bought the season pass for it. But then it was like when you see a season pass, but originally when season passes came out, that meant you got all the content that came out for the game. And then it was like they released the 4 DLCs, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we decided we're going to bring out extra skins. Here you go. And then the skins, it's like $10 to get a pack of skins for one character. And that's when it sort of really felt like game companies were starting to get into this, nickel and diming people for stuff. I mean, you could use Battlefield as an example too, where you'd play the game, you'd unlock stuff, and then they started going down the path of, oh, what? You playing Bad Company too? Well, here you go. You can actually unlock all the weapons and skins and things for this character. You don't have to play the game. Here's a guy who just sat there, spent 100 hours to get what he's got. But you know what? You're level 1. Drop $20 on the game. Bang! You got everything unlocked. And it sort of, in a way, for me, defeats the whole point to gaming, which is that sense of achievement, that sense of unlocking things as you go through the gameplay. Sort of a reward for doing it. I mean. That's what games like Quake Champions, for example, are pissing me off, because at the moment it costs $30 to get into it, which doesn't seem like much. But you've got the characters there, as I've discussed in my review of the game, and each character is $10. And each character, though, has different perks. And, for example, I got mine through the Humble Bundle, under their monthly subscription, and it came with the character BJ Blazkowicz from Wolfenstein. And he's got the same amount of abilities as the basic default Ranger from Quake 1 character, which is one passive ability, one active ability. But then you've got these characters that you've got to buy, like Doomslayer from the Doom games, and he's actually got 3 abilities. So therefore, he has more abilities than these other characters. So you get a definite advantage if you've got disposable income to drop $10 on that character. And then to unlock all the characters in Australian dollars, you're looking at about $100. And that's on top of if you've paid the $30 entry fee. So $130 when you look at, again, Quake 3 Arena, which was, you'd pay about $90 for that brand new when it came out. And you got everything. You got offline play, you got bots. All the characters are unlocked. There was no difference between the characters except for their visual style. I think the one character was this eyeball on legs, and a lot of people would use him because he had a smaller hitbox than the other characters, and that was the only advantage any of the characters had over each other. But for all intents and purposes, the whole game came down to playing with skill. And playing that game, I found I'm coming up against characters that have these extra abilities compared to the characters I've got, and they do feel like, yeah, they've got an advantage over you if you are just going that free to play path, because that game is going to be free to play when it does launch. Because it's got this sort of now where you earn in-game currency, and you can hire a character. You drop X amount of the in-game currency on the character, and you'll unlock it for 24 hours. Now you think you've got to sleep 8 hours a day. You might have to go to work for 8 to 10 hours a day. There's 18 hours gone. You take it out, and then so you're essentially spending your in-game currency to unlock a character for a couple of hours use. Or you can drop $10 and unlock it permanently. But yeah, for me, it's like you end up paying for more than a full game, but you're also getting less features because, I mean, yeah, the same thing. If I've got to go buy the Champion Pack on Steam, which is an extra $30 to get the ability to host custom games, for example. But it's all online, and they won't do the offline because they're worried about it interfering with their online currency transactions and things. But I mean, it is in a full commercial game or AAA title. Is there any good that can come from, doing this sort of stuff? What are the pros? Because
if it's managed properly, I mean, if you manage it properly, if it's a AAA, I mean, there are AAA MMOs that are released, right? And there is sort of a, do they use cosmetic microtransactions? Do they have usable microtransactions? Or do they make it so that the in-game currency, the second in-game currency that can still be earned in-game, that can be used to achieve these things? So players who, if it was a free game, for instance, who play the game for free, still have access to these sorts of items, whether they provide an advantage or not. I mean, there's sort of two sides to it. And there are games that have managed it well, like Cryptic, I can't remember who took over the game, but Star Trek Online, they have both cosmetic and usable microtransactions. The game itself is free to play.
Yeah.
And you can purchase these items with currency that can be converted to the premium currency. So in-game items in-game currency that can get these items. And not all of them provide an advantage. You still actually have to, have some skill at the game in order to be able to use these things properly. So it isn't like an I win button,
Yeah.
But some other, I mean, you can treat Path of Exile as a AAA if you really want to. It's not like made by EA kind of AAA, but it's played by a lot of people.
Not a game I've played with, so I'll take you as the authority on it.
I mean, they don't have, the only thing you can buy is cosmetic deals, microtransactions. Apart from, stash tab and stuff to like expand your storage space when you're not roaming around the landscape. That's probably the only thing you can really get. Everything else is just weapon effects, or a pet or something, or your spell is a different color fire or something. Some of which you can earn in-game through events or through other things, but that is managed fine, even though a lot of people put money into this sort of thing, especially in that game. It is managed fine because they're not forcing people into picking up these things.
Yeah, it doesn't make the game unbalanced or all broken if you don't buy them.
Exactly.
Yeah. I guess, I agree with the way that if it's managed right in some regards, it can be a good thing. I don't know if Dane's got Path of Exile, but one game I know he does have that would be very similar in those regards would be Grand Theft Auto Online, which is the multiplayer component of Grand Theft Auto 5, as most people will be aware. And they've copped a lot of criticism over their shark cards, and I've been one of the biggest critics of all about it. And I think that's, again, it's one of those things where if they had managed it right, it would actually could have been a good thing for the game. So what are your thoughts on that, Dane? I'll get into my 2 cents on GTA and whether Rockstar have screwed up with the way they've done the microtransactions.
Well, it really depends. A lot of people don't actually have the time to grind out a lot of the things on that game, and it has become a grind. It feels like more of a grind than other titles that I've played. It's like most titles. World of Tanks is a great example. A lot of their microtransaction stuff, that you purchase gold and the gold will help you level up quicker, whether you're buying a premium tank or whether you're purchasing premium time, but it's a way to level up quickly, as Grand Theft Auto doesn't really have that. Everything you're buying is something you could just save up as well, but you're not really advancing in the game, so to speak. You're just buying crap.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. Because I guess the game that I'd be familiar with that would be similar to World of Tanks is War Thunder. Now, the two things that they've got in common is both of those games are free to play as well. So it does provide revenue for the developers, but you can grind in-game and get everything. At least with War Thunder, I know, if there's a plane there, that you can eventually get to that plane, but it'll take you a hell of a long time. And I can understand people wanting to take shortcuts because, it's like, as we get older, we've got jobs, families, and you want to remain competitive. But yeah, Rockstar, for example, for me, it's like the fact that, okay, if people want to buy cosmetic items and stuff, it's great. But the thing is, I originally played on Grand Theft Auto on the Xbox 360, and to begin with, me and my mates were making a lot of money. The missions were rewarding what I would call a fair amount of money. It didn't feel like a grind. It was fun to do, and we're earning cash. The problem was, though, they weren't selling any of their damn shark cards. Now, we use the term microtransactions, but really, when you're paying $25 to $50 or even $70 for something, that's, to me, no longer a microtransaction, because that's getting into full expansion territory, as we would call it back in the good old days. For that sort of money, you got either a brand new game or an expansion. I mean, some of the cars, what their shark cards convert to currency, 2 cars can cost almost as much as what the game itself costs. Now, it's good in a way because it allows them to keep bringing out new content. And the fact that they sold so many games and have made so much money, I think, in some regards, would allow for new content. A lot of people would be happy to pay for actual expansion packs, like the Lost and the Damned from GTA 4, and they could make money from that, and we would feel like we're getting some value for money. But the problem for me is it's not just cosmetic items there. That money, the shark cards, can be spent to unlock something like the tank or a buzzard and things like that, where even if you level up, you might not have the money to buy that, so you've got to keep grinding to get the cash up to, so you've got the $1 million to buy the buzzard, or the $1.5 million to get the tank. And if you can just come along and go, well, screw it, here's $50 into the game. Well, I now own the buzzard and the tank. That sort of feels a bit pay to win for me, because you've now got a tank which gives you a massive advantage over other players. They tried to nerf it by, they nerfed the tank to make it a bit easier to kill. But yeah, it's still one of those things for me that it feels like, a bit of a murky area. If these items were sort of like, $1, $1 would buy you $1 million in game or something. Put it in reach of everybody, sort of thing. But I'm seeing these people that are like, well, I'm a single man. I got disposable income, so I can just throw hundreds of dollars on these games. But yeah, we do get free content. They keep upgrading the game. I mean, the game's been out for a few years, but it's still a bit murky. But I think that, again, that it's what Cav was saying, Cobalt, aka Cav, is saying about the management of it, that they went the wrong way about it by nerfing the actual game, making it grindy, which sucks the fun out of any game, in my opinion. And that's what we play games, is to have fun. That if they hadn't nerfed the game missions and things to give you less money, I mean, there's still people who are going to buy the shark cards. They've already made $1 billion, and it just feels like it's getting a little bit greedy to me.
But can you honestly say that there's anything you could buy with, say, real world money that would advance you in the game, like help you earn credits or anything? Like, a lot of these free to play things, like I mentioned before, have the premium mode, which gives you 3 times experience and money like that. It doesn't. Grand Theft Auto doesn't have that. you're spending real world money to transfer it into just money you can earn in game.
Yeah, virtual money.
Which,
But it's a difference, I think, between having to spend a month trying to get the money up to get a tank, and then just dropping a chunk of real world cash and having that tank unlocked in 5 seconds. That's what I mean. At least like when I bought my, I haven't got a tank yet, but like when I got my buzzard, it was like, oh yeah, mate, I earned this buzzard. You know, I had to level up and grind the cash to get it. Sort of sense of satisfaction for me came from that.
Well, with the World of Tanks, there's sort of 2 streams of how you use their microtransactions. You can take the buying a premium account for a limited period of time route, and you know that on its own, or maybe a few gold ammo rounds, which you can get now for in-game currency.
Yeah,
it's a lot more expensive, but you can still get them. But the premium time, that on its own provides you with it makes the game sort of in the higher end of the tier spectrum more enjoyable. You don't have to really worry about am I going to lose credits this game and not be able to play the tank that I want next game or something like that. You don't have to worry about that. That's one track. Unfortunately, they also put in the other track of doing it, and this is the poorly managed side, where they add vehicles which are a substantial advantage over their regular counterparts, and they also make them the cheapest premium vehicles of that sort of tier, and they also to purchase, and they also make them they advertise them just so much, and they particularly focus their time on Russian premium vehicles because most of their player base is Russian. And
they're appealing to the locale. Yep,
it's sort of it's a bit of a slippery slope they just went down.
So I don't agree with the premium vehicles. I think they're a long-term investment, and a lot of the times they're not better than the vehicles they're playing against. So, for example, the Churchill 3, the Matilda, the IS-6. They're all kind of mid-range vehicles, but the whole reason you buy them is for your crew experience. You use them to grind your crews up.
Yeah, but the thing is, as long as you can... Category. Well, for me, like as I said, games like War Thunder and World of Tanks, I can sort of give a free pass because they're free to play to begin with. It's the same as Warframe. You know, I can go play Warframe. It feels like a AAA game. I do not have to buy anything, though. As long as the game is fun, I don't care if I've got to grind. But the thing is, does it maybe actually harm the game because of that, you know, not being, like, if I get invested in a game, if there's a tank or something I want to get, then I'm like, I'm going to work for that. And when I get it, I feel like, I've invested so much time into it, I want to keep playing the game. But on the other scale of things, I've seen people play games like Battlefield and stuff, and because they have just bought everything from the get-go, all they're getting is numbers on their screen from killing things. There's not that sense of satisfaction of like, I've unlocked this, I've unlocked that. And so they get bored with the game really quickly because there's nothing new for them, because they've got nothing to work for, because they've bought it. And so I think some games it's actually hurt them in a sense, having the paid content, especially when it is, beyond cosmetic. In Battlefield, I mean, there's a huge advantage to being able to just fully upgrade your tank. Then piecemeal by piecemeal, a fully equipped tank is going to do better than a non-fully upgraded tank. And I sometimes think that it actually does more harm to some games than actually good. And like I said, the only excuse one for me is like free to play, for the fact that you're getting something for free. So it does help the developers because that's how they get their money, is through the microtransactions. But it's where I sort of draw the line is if it is the cosmetic items that do no harm, sort of thing. Somebody wants to say, oh, well, look at this, I've got an Aussie flag on the side of my tank, I paid 50 cents for that. It's like, oh, good on you. Developers got some money, you got a flag on the side of your tank, yay. But when it is those things where it's like, well, I bought this tank and now I earn XP 3 times faster than you. This tank does twice the damage of any of the free ones. Where it actually is pay to win comes into it. I guess that's really, the major concern for me. Obviously, Quake Champions, I'm really worried that's going to damage itself for the fact that some characters, and you're going to have people who want to play that game, especially free-to-play, and a lot of the free-to-players that don't have the disposable income are just going to be target practice for everybody else that can afford to get the overpowered characters. I mean, Overwatch is the same. Apparently, same. It's got the loot crates, and this is what I'd like to get onto next: is these loot crates, because that's what's been in the news lately around gaming about whether these loot crates are just essentially dressed up gambling, and whether it's encouraging and teaching kids to normalise or having gambling normalised for children. I mean, because the way the loot crates work is some games that you can play the game, grind away, get these free ones. You click on them, you get a random object. Like PUBG, for example, you play that. After you get a certain amount of points, you can buy a crate and you'll get random items. You can actually then sell the items out of those crates. But they're talking about, again, paid content coming out. And it's like, wait, we paid, this is a full price game sort of thing. $30 at the moment. It's in early access and they're already looking at ways of milking it. So, yeah, is loot crates a form of gambling, and is it bad? Because, I mean, for me, it is gambling because you're paying, in a lot of these games, real-world money on a random chance of getting an item that is virtual. And a lot of people, they make these items, like in PUBG, there's a mini-skirt, and the mini-skirt goes for several $100s or something like that. And so, yeah, whereas that's not a random loot crate, well, it is, but you're not paying anything for it yet. There are games, though, where you have to buy these crates. I think CSGO, you can buy crates, or H1Z1, you can buy crates. And kids will go, oh, there's this gun skin I want to get. And they, spend the money on the ultra-rare crate, and they get some shitty skin that they didn't want. So they, oh, well, I'll keep going until I get that skin I want. And it just seems like, yeah, another easy sort of cash-in, but preying on people, human nature to be addictive and our desire for materialistic things.
That's the exact same concept of, say, the Pokemon card game or Magic the Gathering. You're paying for a blind bag, hoping that you get a good card.
Oh yeah, I thoroughly agree. I mean, it is a gamble because you are gambling on the chance that you're going to get something worth. But in saying that, the difference with cards for me is you have now. I guess it's a mixed bag with video games, but I'll get there. But with a Pokemon card, you open that bag up, you have physical cards in your hand. Yeah, they might be 5 cents worth of cardboard. But you can, if you get the right card, actually go and recuperate your losses, because you can go to find somebody who considers that card to be of value and sell it. And you can sell it at a price you want it for. But you have something tangible for your money. The same as gambling on horses and things, You gamble and you might lose your money, but there's a chance you will get money back. And then when you get that money back, you're free to do it. But with video games, you get a loot crate, and if you don't get what you wanted, you might be stuck with that. You might not be able to trade it with another player. You'll never be able to own it, because video games, you never own a game. You basically are renting them according to the license agreements. And if that's, say, again, Quake Champions, an online-only game, when that server shuts down, what happens to those items? You can no longer use them. And while the company walks away with a pocket full of cash. So if anything is probably worse than traditional gaming. I mean, you could say it's a bit different with CSGO and games like that where you can actually sell the skins.
Well, yeah.
But it's still like pixels on a screen, something that I could Photoshop in 5 minutes. I've seen some of these CSGO skins and they're several $1,000s, and I'm like, are you kidding me? I used to be able to do that shit. And Quake 2, I'd open up Paint Shop and paint up my own skins that were just as good, but I'd never in a million years think of selling them for several $100s.
Yeah. With Pokemon cards, there's sort of there's at least two categories. There's the people who you go buy them, you just buy a pack for the sake of, yeah. Maybe there'll be a good card in there, maybe there won't be, but I'm only just going to buy that one pack. And because you're doing it in the real world, there's more. It's harder to do it twice, Whereas, if it's online, you press the button. And you get
Oh, well, I guess
3, 4, 5.
I guess the comparison I'd make there is video poker. I don't like playing. I'm not a gambler to begin with. I'm not really big on gambling. But if I had to play a card game, I would rather sit with somebody across from me, because even though it's frowned upon, I can at least reach across the table, grab that person's cards, and flip them over, and say, "Oh, okay, you did have a queen and you did have a jack." But with digital stuff, it's like video poker. You don't know if that card was going to be what it was when it turned over, before it turned over, or if the computer decided at that second, no, we've got to make sure we win. sort of thing. And it's like that for me with, well, PUBG. I bought these crates, and I'm finding I'm just getting some of the same items over and over and over again. But because I'm not paying for them and I can actually sell them, I'm not too upset about that. But if I was paying premium currency, and it's like, oh, great, there's my third set of camo pants that I can only sell for 5 cents, but I've spent $10 to get those 5-cent camo pants, I'd be a bit pissed off.
Well, yeah, CSGO, the people doing unboxings, they both serve to warn people away from and draw people towards any, well, maybe not equal.
Yeah, well, there's been a few that have got busted, actually. Well, there's been a few people doing that with those unboxing things, you know, the sort of jackpot machine where it all spins around and stops on an item, where the people who are selling those things have actually rigged it for the reviewer to get good stuff. So they get the views, which gives people a false sense of, you know, that's, I guess, a completely different thing altogether is, you know, the morals in modern gaming, whether it be developers or the streamers or whatever.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, that's it. You don't know what you're going to get. There's no way to, I mean, with Pokemon cards, you can rip the packet open and whatever's in there is what was going to be in there all along.
Absolutely.
Yeah, with video games, I can go in and I can go code a game and say, okay, there's an 80% chance you're going to get this game, this skin. But we're going to make sure you've spent $100 before you even have a chance of getting that skin. But in the meantime, here's 20, 30 skins that nobody wants. That there's a million of them around. And that's what worries me, is that it's too open to manipulation.
It was more manageable for CSGO when nothing was nothing just disappeared after a certain number of uses or time limit or something. Like you've got like custom music and stuff, and you've got gloves, and I'm just waiting for them to add CSGO hats and the entire community to just uproar go, no more, because I feel like that's going to happen.
Yeah, well, do you think that's the problem? Is we the gamers obviously are the issue here, because obviously they do this because people are buying it. See, where I'm old school. See, last Counter-Strike I played was the original Counter-Strike, and back then the only add-ons for the game were mods, and once you bought the game, that was it. You bought the game, and the whole point was to play the game. There was none of this, oh look at me, I got a skin on me knife sort of thing. It was just everybody was on equal footing. It was all about the game itself, where now it seems to be more about like virtual dress-ups. Like, oh, look at me, guys, I've got the hot pink Hello Kitty camo outfit. It cost me $200, but I got it, where it's just like, it doesn't, it's just a distraction in the game sort of thing. Distracts from the game, should I say. But yeah, I mean, yeah, so you're probably, and that's why I guess it's good, because obviously you guys are a bit younger than me. You know, I'm what I'd call a first generation gamer, and that's how a lot of it comes across to me. Is, you know, we got used to doing things a certain way. You paid anywhere up to $100 for a game, and the game was complete. Now we're getting the same games from the same companies, and it feels like they're being cut up into piecemeal, and you can pay for a full price for the game, and then actually pay more for what you used to get before when you had more content, and now you end up paying more for less. And you've got to get it a bit at a time. Saints Row 2 would be a good example of that. I think there's one good example of, I almost had hope with Saints Row 3 because THQ went bust, basically, because when you got Saints Row 2, yes, it had DLCs and stuff, but you got a lot of content and stuff that was in the game for free, like hot dog costumes and things like that. Then when Saints Row 3 came out, the content was on the disc, locked away. PC gamers managed to crack it, but console users, you're forced to unlock it by paying for it. And a lot of the stuff that they were selling you was what you had previously got as part of the base game in the previous game. So Saints Row 2, you got the hot dog costume. All you had to do was earn money in-game, go to the clothes store, buy it. And then in Saints Row 3, you actually had to buy it as DLC. And a lot of people got that pissed off with that, and THQ pretty much went bankrupt because of it, because it backfired on them. But unfortunately, we're not seeing that enough. You hear this, oh, if you don't like it, speak with your wallet. And people like me, I boycotted Electronic Arts for the simple fact that when Battlefield 3 came out and they started going down this route of piecemealing content, like, here's a game that mostly focuses on multiplayer, but oh, you know what, if you want all the rest of the maps, you've actually got to buy them separate. Where, yeah, again, you know, the old games, it would be like you'd get the multiplayer component like we'll say Halo 2. Halo 2, you got the single player campaign, and you got like 20 multiplayer maps. And then they added another disc that added even more multiplayer maps. But then you play Battlefield 3, and it's like, hey, I already paid $115 for the damn limited edition version. Now they want me to pay an extra $60 for premium, which includes one of the DLCs I already got from one of the expansions, which I already got from buying the limited edition, so I'm only getting 3/4 of what everybody else is getting. And then people buying the game for $60 getting all this shit, and it's like, wait, you want me to pay another $60 on top for this? And then they had guns like that you had to do the co-op. To get them in co-op, it was like, oh, I had a limited edition gun. It's like, you bought the limited edition, here's a special gun. And then later on, it's like, hey, everybody, you can buy this gun that, you know, this person paid an extra $50 more for. Yeah, it just seems sort of, yeah, I don't know. It just seems dodgy as fuck. But yeah, but yeah, loot crates, it's sort of like a very similar thing. It's like, well, we could have given this character 4 or 5 skins, but as it is, we're giving you 1 skin, and you'll need to pay money and have a roll of the dice to get a crate to get the others.
Yeah. As what you describe yourself as a first generation gamer.
Yeah, that's the sort of point I was getting at. Is it is it with younger people that were like Xbox One onwards? Have they just become normalised to this?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because you've been sort of, you know, your gaming experience has been with the same companies that have got bigger and bigger and become your big AAA titles.
Yeah.
AAA title producers. But the thing is definitely not the same people doing them, and it's possible that they're not developing games for the people, like for the actual gamers, as was originally done.
Yeah, gaming is definitely more mainstream than when I was younger, and in a way that's what makes even less sense to me, because it was like, well, back in the day, you could understand they charged $90 for a game because there were fewer people playing, for example, on PC. Even console gaming was still a nerd's domain. Where now you've got the guy who used to be a bogan and would play football and watch the V8s on the weekend. He's now on playing PUBG on the weekends with his mates. Or he's knocking back beers. And so they've actually got a bigger, like they've got more revenue coming in, but they're still charging the same, but they're even charging even more. And it's like, well, they've got this extra revenue in. Why are they getting so greedy? How much profit is too much profit for them?
And with digital distribution, it's not necessarily the same cost as doing physical distribution.
Yeah, they don't got to print up CDs, covers, manuals. There's no transport costs. They don't have storefronts that have staff. You know, and it's even crazy too, because a lot of these digital content providers are now getting to the point where they actually cost more to buy the game digitally than it does to walk into bloody EB Games or somewhere. And EB Games are used to, you know, in my opinion, being one of the biggest rip-offs going. But yeah, there are times where it's cheaper to get games from them than it is through Steam. And that's a physical copy of the game. And it's like, what the hell? How does that work?
It used to be the other way around, but now it's changed so that physical is much, much, much cheaper.
Australia tax, but maybe we'll talk about that another day. Because there's a lot of people who don't realise just how bad we got it here. They just think we Aussie gamers are a bit of whingers. But yeah, just like Xbox Live, if you bought Fallout 3 on Xbox 360 and all the DLCs, digital only, it ended up, I think I did the math, it was like at the time $180 complete. Yet I could go down to JB Hi-Fi and get the Game of the Year edition for $45, which had all that content. Sort of a quarter of the price or less for exactly the same content. And it was a physical package, physical manual. You sometimes even had a map included in the box, depending on the game.
Or maybe if it was old enough, maybe you get a keyboard shortcut overlay thing.
Yeah. You can sometimes still get those, but it's like you've got to print them out yourself.
Or you could even write your own, and it actually made sense. Whereas now it doesn't really make sense to do that.
Yeah. But yeah, what do you think of it on the thoughts that, you know, even though everybody's getting outraged about it, I guess the mini DLC thing I wanted to bring up was, you know, them cutting the DLC content, and now seeing Bethesda trying to do like paid mods, and even though it bit them on the arse, they've gone ahead of it, where they're cutting content to release it as a mod or a DLC add-on, and the same as trying to get the paid modders. But the thing is, It's the modders doing all the work for them, but they're taking the majority cut on Steam. I think it was 70% went to Steam and Bethesda, and only 30% was going to the actual modder. And most people were already on the Nexus mods and, using the donate button. If we got mods from Nexus mods and we liked them, we would donate through PayPal to the person who made them, so they were making money, or the modder would be picked up by the developer to work for them. And now they've brought out this creator club, and Bethesda really seems to be going backwards, in my opinion, in this terms of things. They got this creator club. I mean, recently they brought out an update, and it broke our Skyrim. Fallout 4 got broken and can't play it because they brought out an update, and it was just for their this creator club for their paid mods, which we on PC don't need. Yet we couldn't play our games because it broke our mods, and we now have to wait for the mods to be updated for the game. Yet, while they're bringing out for this creator update, there's bugs in the main game they're ignoring. And I'm seeing a lot more developers do this too. Okay, there's bugs in our game, let's ignore that, but here's an update to something so we can make more money, despite our game being broken. So what are your thoughts on that? What do you think, Dane?
Honestly, I don't play a lot of Bethesda games, and when I do, I don't actually mod them. So that sort of stuff hasn't actually affected me.
Well, if you had a game that you played and you absolutely loved, and then the next version came out and all this stuff, you paid full price for it, and then you found things that were getting cut, or your access to mods. Surely you've played some games that you've modded or something. Do you play Arma 3 or something like that with mods? How would you feel if the developer turned around on the next version and started paywalling a lot of that content, especially the stuff that you got for free? Now, with mods, for me, for example, the company made a lot of games. Like id Software sold at least 10 copies of Quake 2 because friends saw me playing Action Quake 2, and there was nothing like it at the time. It's basically what paved the way for a lot of modern shooters. And they sort of like seeing that, and they're like, wow, what's that? And I was like, oh, that's Action Quake 2, but you'll need to buy Quake 2 to play it. So they're like, I want to play that with you. Where can I get it? And I was like, well, you can get this for free, but you need Quake 2 to play it. So they went out and bought copies of Quake 2. Bam, id Software made money.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like with me, when they turn around and do this shit where it's like, oh, well, you can't mod, or you got to pay the mods and stuff. It actually, I would think it's costing them more money. Well, it does with the older generation gamers, because we're like, well, screw this, man. The previous game, I could go get mods, as well as paid full price for the game. And they're losing, I think, sales from us. But my main worry is, again, we're getting outnumbered because you get these kids come along and it's like, well, they're used to it. So they're like, well, what's your problem, old man? This game company's got to make money and stuff. And it's like, well, Rockstar just on the original 360 and PlayStation 3 launch made $1 billion. And then they brought it out on Xbox One and PlayStation 4, probably made another $1 billion, and then they released it on PC and probably made another $1 billion. And so it's like, well, do they really need that money? Because like I said, id Software was, we made all this money, here's some free content. And in a way, yeah, Rockstar is giving us free content, but they're still like, oh yeah, take our shark cards.
It's possible that all these companies are bombarding us with all these possible different techniques and ways of doing mods or DLC or whatever, in order to both find something that works for the community and is acceptable to them, and also works for regulation and from a legal perspective, like they could slide it through and it's still acceptable.
Well, thank you. That's a word, actually, regulation. Is that the problem is the games industry, the problem being that they're not regulated. They seem to get away with a lot of stuff that if it was in any other industry, you wouldn't get away with it. I mean, I've used the example of in the past of, let me see, let's see if we can bring up something here to change on the screen. An image where I made a image of a Ferrari, and the Ferrari's up on blocks. It's got no wheels on it, and it's like, yeah, welcome to the new Ferrari sports car. It's early access, so you only get the chassis, the body, and steering wheel. Engine, wheels, and fuel tank may or may not come at a later date to be determined. And basically, comparing how early access games or this microtransaction thing works, but using a real world thing, and people just wouldn't tolerate that. If you went out and bought a car, and you couldn't use it because they didn't bring the wheels out, or to use it you had to buy wheels, nobody would put up with that. And the games industry seems to be like that. There doesn't seem to be any regulation on pricing. Steam can sell to Australians, but because the Australian government doesn't give them the deal they want, they go, well, fuck you, we'll just up the prices, even though they say the developers are the ones who set the prices. It's like, well, why are the developers doing this to us? Especially being digital content.
The things that they had to relent to after a little bit of legal battle, they only did so barely. Like the refunds.
Yeah.
It's barely acceptable.
Yeah, 2 hours, and it's like early access titles. 2 hours is you get nowhere. I'm giving up on early
what's
access
the other
titles
limit
now.
again?
2 hours or 2 weeks.
Yeah,
so considering
right.
your library for 2 weeks and you don't play it, you can get a refund on it. But the minute you go over 2 hours of gameplay, and some games you can't realise that they're bad until you've played them for 2 hours, especially early access titles.
Oh yeah, like.
So do you think maybe there needs to be better regulation? I mean, especially when you look at it like this, that when you can go to these Steam comparison sites, for example, and you'll see they might. I think it was Modern Warfare 4. I've seen that, and it was something like $20. But for Australians, it was something like $60. It's like, wait, It's the same digital file sitting on a digital server. And Origin's guilty of this too, where, I went and looked at Battlefield, and it was like $60 Australian premium. But if you logged in with a proxy through Mexico, or a VPN, it came up as $30. And it's like, but wait, and people are like, they've got to pay staff and stuff. And I'm like, wait, what staff? The file that the Mexican is coming from the same damn server as the Australian's getting it. The only difference is the pricing. Again, no transport cost. It's just a bit of electricity going through a copper wire, the same as anybody. So transport costs and all the old excuses. I mean, it was understandable back in, like, say, the 80s and the 90s that it was like, well, they've physically got to ship these products. So there's transport costs. If a game's got to come from Japan, it's got to go on an ocean liner. So they've got to make them more in customs and
it'd be more expensive in, say, South America or Africa or something, because they had to truck it through a
hostile area and shit.
Perhaps,
yeah. You see even Brazilians are like, I live in Brazil, and they've got it worse than us when it comes to pricing.
Yeah.
Or my favourite excuse is we charge you more because Australia pirates. But then you see Russia, and Russia, the most notorious for pirating in the world, and they get told, because they pirate it, we sell it cheaper, so they're more inclined to buy it. It's like, what? How does that work? So
the actual people who do the pirating aren't really in Australia. I mean, there's a very, very small number of people if they did live in Australia.
Well, technically, what a pirate is somebody who is a pirate is the person who's actually ripping the game or the movie, and then they're doing so to sell it, to make money from it. That is what piracy is, or if they're giving it away and undermining somebody else. But if the people downloading the game technically aren't pirates.
If they were going to do a regulation, they couldn't do it on a piecemeal basis, country by country. It'd have to be a global body with one unified set of rules that apply to everyone all the time, no exceptions.
Yeah, that is true.
You couldn't do one country, because you couldn't do it each country at a time, because there'd be too many side deals and everything, and everyone would get a different go, and you'd still have a whole lot of these issues, like the pricing would be different.
Yeah.
Different countries, you'd have the DLC rules might be different in different countries. Microtransactions might be legal in one country, might be illegal in another one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's also the same case with Valve and a few others, is because, like, Microsoft has had a harder time getting around the loopholing Australia, because they actually have offices here. So because they're located here, they fall under our laws. Where Steam is sort of like, well, we're in the United States, so fuck you. Even though they're taking money out of Australia and doing business with Australians, and that's where the sort of grey area has been. Where companies like Microsoft are like, well, you've got an office and an ABN in Australia, you're trading under Australian law and regulations, and they can't squirm out of that one. it holds them accountable to pricing systems and things, even though the ACCC ain't what it used to be, and they still charge us more than what other areas or places would. I mean, one way you could look at it is like New Zealand. New Zealand gets theirs in New Zealand dollars because the government basically told Steam they could do whatever they want. And I think that's almost what it's like, is if Valve doesn't get their own way, they're just like, well, you do things our way or we'll screw over the gamers, us, the general public. I don't know. But yeah, we're getting to the hour mark, so I'm going to say, okay, overall, I think microtransaction loot crates and mini DLCs are bad for the gaming industry. They're bad for the gamers. But I don't think they're going to go away anytime soon, because I think it's become too normalised with the majority of casual players now that have come along. But I think it's got to go, because I think there are games. I think Quake Champions is going to fail because of it, and a few other people are echoing those sentiments on the Steam forums. Well, people will defend Overwatch because Overwatch is like, well, the loot crates, well, they're a choice, they're cosmetic, but you don't have to buy them. But people still feel like they're at some sort of disadvantage by not being able to do it. I mean, like, especially when you look at a game like Halo Reach or something. Like Halo Reach brought in the unlocks for Halo, where you play the game, you earn points, and then you can unlock items. But that's it. You didn't have to. It was unlocks from playing. Where Quake 3 is basically doing what Halo Reach did, but you've got to pay for shit, sort of thing, to get it. Unlock it permanently.
I mean, I think to manage it correctly, and it really depends on where the game's coming from and what the community really expects them to have in the game. And if the developers don't listen to the community, don't give them things that enhance the game, not necessarily usable items, but just things that make the game more enjoyable, and if it's not managed correctly, then it's not gonna be good for the community, and it's just gonna look bad from people looking from the outside.
Yep. And what are your thoughts, Dane? Do you got any final thoughts on the subject?
Nothing I could add that's actually useful.
Okay. So yeah, I'm going to say that I think, my conclusion, as I've already said, is I think it's a bad thing at the moment, but I think it could be a good thing if, like you said, Cobalt, that it's if management. But I also think that the governments need to step up and make these companies a bit more accountable for it. But unfortunately, the companies' responses generally seem to be, if you make us accountable, then we will increase pricing and punish the consumer, instead of trying to negotiate a middle ground. I don't know. We can hope for the best, but time will tell how we go and things. But I do believe, hopefully, like with political correctness and everything, everybody will one day turn around and go, wait, this is ridiculous. I'm just giving these people money for free. They should earn it like the rest of us. Until that happens, it's not going to change in a hurry. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me tonight, guys, for this discussion. If you've been watching this, thanks for watching. I'll be uploading it to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/Unbreakable Gamers. We're the guys with the circle and the blue UG logo, the original and best. Appreciate you watching. Stay tuned for the next video. We'll work out a topic in between now and then, hopefully, and I'll upload this video to YouTube tomorrow. Okay, thank you very much for watching, and thanks for taking part, guys.
No problem.
All right, good.